Dietrich Bonhoeffer, born in February 1906, was a German Lutheran pastor, neo-Orthodox theologian, anti-Nazi dissident, and resistance fighter. For years, he tried to change minds. He spoke out against growing hatred, blind obedience, and the way people turned a blind eye to the cruelty happening around them. He believed that if he could just make them see Jews, make them understand, they would wake up. But no matter how much evidence he presented, no matter how clear the truth was, people refused to listen. One evening, after years of resisting the regime, he returned home to find his father waiting for him with a heavy heart. Two men were in his room. They had come to take him away. Locked in a prison cell, Bonhoeffer had nothing but time to think. He had watched his country once, a land of poets and thinkers, descend into a mob of cowards and criminals. He had seen friends, neighbors, even intellectuals surrender their morality not because they were all evil, but because they had stopped thinking. And then he realized the real enemy wasn't malice. It was stupidity. There were reasons he considered this a greater threat than evil, which I will now discuss. Evil, according to Bonhoeffer, can be confronted. It can be exposed, fought, and even defeated. There is always a way to resist it because, at its core, evil knows when it is. Even the worst of people, deep down, recognize that what they are doing is wrong. This is why evil carries within itself the seed of its own destruction. It leaves behind a sense of unease, lingering guilt that can be exploited and overturned. But stupidity? Stupidity is immune. Immune to logic, blind to reason, deaf to truth. It does not engage. It simply refuses to see. You can argue with a malicious person, but you cannot argue with a stupid one because they do not recognize facts. They dismiss them. They do not debate. They mock. And most dangerously, they are utterly convinced of their own rightness. This is what makes stupidity more dangerous than malice. Malice can be countered, but stupidity is impervious. Martin Luther King Jr. said something very similar. Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. The most terrifying aspect of stupidity is that it often operates unconsciously. People who act foolishly do not even realize it. They believe they are right. They cling to their views with such certainty that no argument, no evidence, no rational explanation can shake them. Instead of questioning their beliefs, they double down, becoming even more rigid. As Mark Twain famously said, "Never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience." We have all encountered different kinds of stupid people who use dismissive slogans whenever we try to engage with them. They say things like, "whatever," or "I don't care," their way of avoiding the reality of their own stupidity. It is frustrating, much like dealing with a narcissist, because they will never change. But the danger of stupidity extends beyond the individual level. It spreads within society like a sickness. It infiltrates groups, movements, and systems that demand obedience. The power of one depends on the stupidity of the many. This is why mass stupidity so often accompanies rising authoritarianism. People do not lose their intelligence, they surrender it. They give up their independence in exchange for belonging. They stop thinking critically and start repeating whatever they are told. And once a person has surrendered their mind, there is no limit to what they can be made to do. They will commit evil and never see it as evil. They will spread lisand, call it truth. They will destroy lives convinced they are on the right side of history. This is why stupidity is not just frustrating, it is dangerous. It is a weapon in the hands of those who know how to use it. And perhaps the most chilling realization? You cannot fix it with reason. To combat it, we must first understand the true nature of stupidity. Stupidity does not question itself. It does not feel doubt or shame. It moves forward with absolute confidence. And in doing so, it becomes an unstoppable force in service of whatever it has chosen to follow. Bonhoeffer saw this firsthand. He lived in a nation once known for its poets and philosophers, Germany, the land of Goethe, Kant, and Beethoven. And yet, he watched as it turned into a nation of cowards and criminals. He He saw ordinary people, many of them intelligent and educated, surrender their ability to think and instead blindly follow the Nazi regime. This is why Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity is not an intellectual defect but a moral one. A person can be brilliant in thought, yet utterly foolish in action. Consider Martin Heidegger, one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, who despite his intellect pledged loyalty to the Nazi Party and remained unrepentant until his death in IS. 1976. He was smart, but, according to Bonhoeffer, he was also deeply stupid. By contrast, a person can be intellectually slow yet profoundly wise, moral, and kind. Intelligence and wisdom are not the same. Stupidity, as Bonhoeffer saw it, is not a lack of intelligence, is a failure of moral courage. And one is not born stupid, one becomes stupid. How that happens is what I will discuss next. Stupidity is a state of mind that arises when a person surrenders their responsibility to think. It is not an inborn trait, but a transformation, a condition that people allow themselves to fall into. And this transformation is not merely personal, it is social. Stupidity thrives in groups and environments where independent thought is discouraged, where people simply follow orders, conform, and submit to prevailing narratives without question. Bonhoeffer observed how the Nazi regime turned ordinary people into unthinking followers. They were not inherently evil, nor were they necessarily unintelligent, but they stopped questioning. They let go of their ability to discern truth from falsehood. They became tools, instruments of a greater agenda. Bonhoeffer described this phenomenon as almost a sociological law. A similar transformation was depicted by George Orwell in 1984, where Big Brother brainwashed people to the point of limiting their very thoughts. The regime didn't just control their actions. It made them stupid so they could no longer think properly. Bonhoeffer made the same observation. When power rises, stupidity spreads. Under the influence of authority, whether political or ideological, many people willingly relinquish their inner independence. They accept the slogans. They absorb the propaganda. They repeat the oversimplified explanations. And they no longer see the world for what it is. And this is where stupidity becomes most dangerous. The stubborn weight of stupidity, Bonhoeffer's warning and how to resist its stupidity, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer observed, is not mere ignorance. It is not a lack of intelligence, education, or knowledge. It is something more insidious, a moral and psychological condition, a surrender of the capacity for independent thought. It is stubborn, yet passive. It doesn't argue its own point as much as it repeats what has been fed to it. The truly stupid person does not think for themselves, yet they are fiercely convinced they are right. When you confront this kind of person with facts, logic, or reason, they don't reflect. They don't reassess. They resist. You're not actually dealing with a person anymore. You are engaging with a system of slogans, catchphrases, and ideologies that have taken possession of their mind. This, Bonhoeffer warned, is what makes stupidity more dangerous than evil. Evil can be exposed. It can be confronted, argued with, even defeated. At some level, evil knows it is evil. But stupidity? Stupidity doesn't know. It doesn't recognize itself. It is not open to conversation because it is not thinking. A stupid person will repeat lies even after those lies have been thoroughly disproven. They will cling to them, not out of malice, but because they are no longer engaging with reality. Their mind has been outsourced to others. This is precisely why a stupid person cannot simply be educated out of their stupidity. You cannot debate them into awareness. You cannot instruct them out of their condition, because their intellect is no longer involved. Their will has been surrendered. Bonhoeffer believes stupidity requires not instruction, but liberation. Until that liberation occurs, until that person regains ownership of their own mind, debate is pointless. But this raises a vital question. If stupidity is not just ignorance but a form of mental enslavement, how do we avoid it? How do we keep from falling into the very same trap of blind conformity and thoughtless obedience? This is where Bonhoeffer's insight becomes not only diagnostic but prescriptive. He doesn't just warn us, he teaches us how to remain free. The following are key principles, drawn from his writings and insights, that can guide anyone wishing to resist the pull of mass stupidity. 1. Never stop thinking. The first and most important safeguard is this: never stop thinking. People become stupid, Bonhoeffer argued, when they give up their ability to question, analyze, and reason independently. The moment we stop asking why, the moment we stop scrutinizing what we are told, we begin to lose ourselves. Always ask questions, especially when something feels too certain. Challenge authority when necessary. Never accept a belief simply because everyone says so or that's the way it is. Popularity does not equal truth. If an idea cannot withstand critical thought, then it is not worth believing. Stupidity takes hold when thought ends. Freedom begins when thought begins. 2. Beware of groupthink. Stupidity is not an individual problem, it is a social phenomenon. It thrives in environments where people conform without thinking. Whenever you find yourself agreeing with a group simply because it's easier than questioning them, stop and ask, am I thinking for myself, or am I just going along with the crowd? History has shown us time and again that when large groups abandon critical thinking, disaster follows. The comfort of belonging must never outweigh the necessity of truth. Friedrich Nietzsche called this the herd mentality, the tendency of people to follow the collective rather than stand as individuals. Both Nietzsche and Bonhoeffer warned, anyone who wishes to be truly wise or truly human must reject blind conformity. 3. Recognize emotional manipulation. Stupidity doesn't always come from within. Often, it is manufactured and weaponized. Propaganda, misinformation, and emotional manipulation are tools of those who benefit from stupidity. Leaders who rely on mass compliance know better than to appeal to logic. Instead, they use fear. They use anger. They use shame. They provide simplistic explanations for complex problems and demand unquestioning loyalty in return. This is how stupidity is spread, not by dumbing people down, but by making them feel something so strongly that they stop thinking. So beware of anything that discourages questioning. If a belief system, movement, or leader demands loyalty and punishes skepticism, it is not here to enlighten you. It is here to enslave you. 4. Reject oversimplification. Stupid people gravitate toward easy answers, black and white thinking. But reality is not black and white. Truth is often inconvenient, uncomfortable, and hard to swallow. If an answer sounds too easy, it probably is. If someone tells you your problems are all caused by one person, one race, one nation, one ideology, they are lying. The truth, as any honest thinker knows, is almost always more complicated. Bonhoeffer believed that real wisdom comes from embracing nuance. And wisdom is the antidote to stupidity. So resist the temptation to simplify what is meant to be wrestled with. The thinking person sits with discomfort. The stupid person runs to certainty. 5. Pursue internal liberation. Bonhoeffer emphasized that stupidity cannot be cured from the outside alone. People must be internally liberated, freed from fear, blind loyalty, and emotional dependency. This means developing moral courage. It means learning how to stand alone in the face of pressure. It means refusing to conform simply because it's safer. This is not easy. In fact, it can be painful. But only those who endure that discomfort will remain truly free. Internal freedom is what allows a person to say no even when everyone else is saying yes. It is what keeps the soul awake when others sleepwalk into disaster. Conclusion: stay alert, stay critical, stay free. This was Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity and his warning to all of us. The world today is filled with misinformation, digital echo chambers, viral disinformation, and blind loyalty to political figures and ideologies that discourage critical thought. We are constantly being nudged by algorithms, by media, by emotion-driven campanistas stop thinking and start reacting. If we do not actively fight to remain intellectually and morally independent, we will not just suffer the consequences of stupidity, we will be ruled by it. We must learn to recognize it in others, and especially in ourselves. We must train our minds to resist ease, comfort, and passive conformity. We must hold our beliefs up to the light and ask, always, is this still true? Is this still mine? Have I really thought this through? Because in the end, stupidity is not just frustrating and is dangerous. It empowers tyrants. It blinds societies, and it silences the very voices that could save us. The choice is ours. Stay alert, stay critical, stay free.